So I was saying to you earlier that I have this thing that I'm pursuing, talking to women about how the pandemic has been different for us as opposed to men. And I say that, and it's really men mostly of our generation. I would say like maybe 30 somethings are having a different experience, those men. But in my experience, a lot of the men that I know have said either my life hasn't really changed since COVID hit, which makes their female counterparts want to vomit, or they're like locked and loaded and hyper vigilant. Um, where I think for women, it's been really hard because for us, when you think about hunter gatherers, we know we're okay if our community is okay.
Mm.
And I think a lot of our clients had a hard time with that, like sudden cut off of other than virtual community,
Mhm.
really live. Like they would come and talk to you at the desk. I
Mhm.
emailed you guys like a month ago, maybe, and said, I really, really miss walking into work and seeing you two and saying, I'm really cranky. Anybody else? And we'd all be like, oh, yeah. Wendy would tell me about the moon. Barb would listen and say something really smart. And I just miss all of that.
Mhm.
And then with our clients as well who have come in, and then they would start in the conversation, we'd feel this universality. When we were talking about 3 a.m., I noticed the other night, because I'm really loving myself at 3 a.m., I pushed myself out on an ice floe. I was like, you're a terrible person. You're this, you're that. I'm like, what is going on here? I'm not a terrible person and I shouldn't be off on this ice floe by myself. And I thought about how when we share stories, we we pull
Mhm.
ourselves back from the ice floe.
Mhm.
So how was that for you both when we got cut off like that?
I think it's all really kind of coming into like the scope of it is all really becoming really clear now that it's like, the community, whether it's like the bricks and mortar, or, the community of heart, like the what we are was like the Himsa was this place where, the bricks and mortar space, but also an energetically held space specifically for self inquiry.
Yeah.
So, like, that is, it was this place where you could count on not having to like do the superficial banter,
Mm-hmm.
or like you could count on your senses were, if you're like a sensory person, you're it's like just that space for self inquiry and whatever comes from that.
So safe, eh?
So safe. And there's not a lot of those spots in the world, like,
Yeah.
that are. And so, and I, after kind of a year in away from it, I really relied on, leaving my four walls and like the feedback, like the energetic feedback from people, and storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
and, energy, and having like some separation from what I do at home. So now all the work, all the creativity, all the relationships,
Mm-hmm.
everything is within the four walls of our houses,
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of us. Um, so yeah, I had that this week, this just clarity around what it was like, and how important that space of, like, specific space that's held for self inquiry, and that's set up for people to like take a deep breath.
And I think too, like just to follow on that, is that self inquiry is not like there's a fishbowl quality to right now, right? Like I feel like tapping on the glass and saying, hey, do you resonate? Like
Yeah.
if you tell a joke in class now on Zoom, like
I'm always sure I'm the only one laughing,
it's
always.
all on silent, on mute. But
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, it's self inquiry. But like when you just said something about the self inquiry and the storytelling,
Mm.
there's something in the shared experience that was and is so rich and absent right now.
Mhm.
Where it's like, oh, it's the ice flow thing. Oh, yeah, I see myself in you, or I see myself differently from you.
Yeah.
And that's missing unless we tap on the fishbowl,
Yeah.
right?
Which happened today when you were
Mm.
teaching.
Hmm.
for class, right? We had that little bit of banter
Oh, that
in
was
the beginning.
nice this
Hmm.
morning.
Yeah, we had a little bit of banter at
Started by
the
you.
10:30 restorative
Hmm.
class. Well, I've been not putting my face up on the screen. I don't know 100% what that's about.
Mm.
I think a little bit of it is just having a little bit of anonymity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I usually don't say anything, but I seem to say something today.
Hmm.
She didn't
Uh,
swear though.
Phew.
yeah, and you know it. And with that curiosity and inquiry is a depth,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
um, a depth of conversation, and there was a lot of laughter
Yeah,
there.
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
There were a lot of tears, there were anger, but there was a lot of laughter.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in relationships that were woven from this knowing that in this place we're safe here,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and yeah, it's safe to be falling apart
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
or not okay
Mm-hmm.
or like really spinning,
Mhm.
and yeah.
And I love the connections that were made within the community that were taken out of the community. You know, people who had moved up from the city and had retired up here and knew nobody,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and trying to make some of those connections, or knowing that someone was having a health crisis and having someone else at a HIMSA who had gone through something and saying, would you mind, would you be open to speaking
Totally.
about that? Or the way the seniors now
Hmm.
and still go for coffee on Friday
Mm-hmm.
morning.
Hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, they've taken that out, and I love that. I love, as a teacher, that moment, and I miss this moment in class where everybody finally sinks in.
Yeah.
It
Hmm.
could be within the first 10 minutes, it could be within the last 10 minutes, and anywhere in between. But there's this really sweet spot.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
You know what? I just talked about that yesterday too
Did you?
with Amanda Cooley from North Bay. And she said, I'm loving teaching on Zoom. It's great. You know, you can still relate to people, you can still feel it. You know, how do you think it is different from your live? And I said,
Yeah.
Mm.
that's missing. I
Yeah.
can't feel that as easily.
And it is interesting because the reason I thought about it was, I think it was the Saturday class.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, there's last Saturday, or the Saturday before. There was a moment in class where I could sense you and all of us got there.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And
Nice.
there was this real subtle,
Mm-hmm.
this subtle sinking a
Mm-hmm.
little bit deeper. And I was like, oh boy, I
Right.
miss that. And it is, the container is held, but it is co created by everyone in that
Mm-hmm.
space.
Mhm.
And everyone in those spaces households. Like
Yes.
how many dogs
Yeah.
on you know, or
Cats that are like,
oh, it is so funny how the pets are so drawn to it, eh?
I
Yeah.
had this interesting thing, because I was thinking about the quest for spiritual practice and the depth of spiritual practice. It is a solo adventure. Like it
Oh yeah.
really is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and that's great, but and then there's the community piece, and I think because it is a solo adventure, having the framework of the community makes it feel less alone,
Yeah.
makes it
Yes.
feel less lonely.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's also what it was, is that we were all there in some kind of quest, for whatever it is. um, and we're sort of held by this commonality of, as I'm saying this in air quotes, as seekers, or
Hmm.
but really,
Mm-hmm.
in that space, and so that's that community piece again.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I was able to, in March, we just squeaked it in actually before everything shut down, a women's circle,
Mm-hmm.
and
Hmm.
then which was super profound, and like really solidified and validated the need for women specifically
Yeah.
to be together.
Hmm.
And we were able to do another one in September outside, and still great, very different, in terms of space. And but as women, like we are pivoting. We
Hmm.
are shifting and working to find new ways to be in community. But it definitely is. I feel personally, and I mean, I have grown up kids now, so I'm not even, managing the lives of children in the household, but the fatigue is catching up to me now, like
Hmm.
big time. Like the emotional fatigue, the fatigue of like taking two businesses, like trying to save two businesses, putting them
Yeah.
online, and I think we talked about this the other day, this idea of overexposure to the people we live with. God love them all. But normally, when
Overexposure.
you would go to the yoga studio, you'd have a break, right? And you'd
Hmm.
have feedback, energetic feedback, conversations from other streams. So you would, and,
To bring in.
especially as a mother, right? You would leave and you would come back to your family,
Hmm.
you know, calmer,
Mm.
let's say,
Here's
or
some new input into, yeah.
exactly. So that that's the piece I'm noticing is that not having that feedback and not having community. And um, I'm just a little more cranky with, you know, like
Hmm.
myself, but also um, doing everything in those four walls is, and also trying to stay in community virtually,
Yeah.
which, I don't have to say this more than one time. If you're working online, it's like the last thing you want to be doing
Mhm.
is connecting with somebody online. But it's
Hmm.
it's so it's going to be this interesting new way forward of how to balance the technology that's keeping us.
Mhm.
Again, it's like gratitude and exhaustion.
Yeah. I heard an expression, partner fatigue. And I
Yeah,
thought that, but it's a long time. Like
yeah,
we're coming up on a year.
Mhm.
And so there's this prolonged, I saw this line, I keep forgetting what it is, but it's something like prolonged reactive state or depression.
mm,
And I was talking to Amanda about this as well, I guess, too, from North Bay, but how our fuses are so short. Because literally Paul wants to lock down. Like he's happy if I'm the only one in his orbit aside from where he works. And I said to him, that's not enough for me. Like you're
Mhm.
great, but I need more than just you for 30 days. Like I need, and I do think it's hunter gatherer. Like I'm an
Mhm.
introvert, but
yeah.
yeah, I
I think
need my
innately, I
girlfriends.
think innately as women, we're the word weavers and the community gatherers.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think that's in us innately.
Yeah.
I have a dear cousin who's lived a long time and continues to live with breast cancer, and she has this really tight group of women. And I said to her, how have the girls been? And she said, everybody has gone into their own corner.
Mm,
Mm.
yeah.
And it's almost like for some, like the survival of the fittest,
Mm,
Mm.
right? Where none of us have been through a pandemic before.
Mm.
mm,
We don't really know what to expect. And so everybody, I think, particularly in the beginning, kind of retreated um, into wherever they
Mm.
retreated,
like
which I,
sheer survival almost,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
which, hats off to you, Allie, for doing that Facebook every day at 10,
Mm.
Yeah, for
because it
sure.
really was a lifeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
For me too.
continues to be a lifeline for
Mm,
so many. Um, and I think over these past few months, I've had time, and I'm listening to stories on CBC, and the other day they were talking about letter writing.
mm,
Hmm. Yeah.
It was so beautiful, and actually, I find myself quite teary a lot recently when I hear stories that really touch my heart.
Hmm.
And I was like, you know, we have got to stay connected.
mm,
Hmm.
And what does that look like?
Hmm.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I know in the beginning, I would much rather pick up the phone and hear somebody's voice than text.
Yeah.
If it was like two or three back and forth, and I was like, okay, no more.
Yeah.
I I want to talk and I want to hear this person's voice. And the other day, I was just, there have been some people in my life who have lost loved ones. And so I've been writing notes. And another friend the other day, I just put a thing in the mail and I thought, I, because what happened for me when I realized I didn't have a job and my partner's job was uncertain was I thought I need a job. So I did get a job. I was very blessed. And that job was outside. That job was a huge learning curve. And the hours were long. And so really I could only be in that job and then be in recovery. Um, which was a bit of a, so I kind of hid in that for a while, which is okay, no judgment there. But the gift of that was I saw ahimsa community members. And when that would happen, my little heart would flutter and I would do my best to take a few moments. And, as well as that acknowledgement was, I really miss it, and still I bumped into one of the seniors the other day in Freshco and through the mask is like, oh, and we just talked about that, how much people miss the face to face and the live class. So I have for many months, and I would see different people through the months, and I felt pretty spoiled and pretty blessed.
I was astounded by how many people would say to me, "I saw Barb."
Yeah.
It was like this big event. It was so great.
Yeah.
But that thing about being weepy, you're probably the fifth person to tell me in a week, women, that you're weepy. Like it's really big. And I'm sure it's about, almost 12 months of fear. Like I feel like it's like whack-a-mole, right? Like, okay, we're out of lockdown. Oh no, you're going right back in again. It's like this constant, you peak up and then get hit back down a little bit. But
well, in this far in, like our lives have changed. Like they have, like having this much time elapsed, things are different.
There's
like
a permanence to it.
Yeah, and I think there's a settling into that too, like an acknowledgement of like, oh, that will never be what it was, and so a settling into that, and the stuff that comes with that, the grief that comes with that, the confusion, whatever. But it's interesting. There was always this thing that I had with little kids, like when my kids were little, that it was like, this part of me that, this energy part of me that wanted to like kind of go after them tidying up along the way so that I didn't have to do it later because I was tired. And what I missed out on from not just like getting on the ground and playing with them. And I'm noticing that now, like how I distract myself.
No
I'm
kidding.
admitting there's more than
Anything
one.
else?
I'm admitting there's more than one. But the ways in which I'm distracting myself from dealing with those, with the like torrent of, because we've been, it's so interesting when you're like, you're in, and I know my situation is no different from anybody else's, but you're in the middle of this whole thing, and then you have to find the creative energy to go this way and like, oh, shift this, and then keep up and like not lose your shirt. And so it's like an interesting, as I sort of let myself like come down, I can feel the space opening up, which I know has to happen, but it's like the just play with the children thing. So like just like let there be the space to mourn it, clear it out, whatever it is, because the more crafts you make, the less, like it's gonna come. Don't be fooled. But
I was saying to you when we first got together today that every day at 3 p.m. I lose my mind.
Mm.
I get overwhelmed. I'm not dealing well with things, and I just feel like I can't talk to anybody else. It should be right around this time, actually. Wait for it. But I feel like the sense of overwhelm, and totally honestly, I have a drink every day, and I'm like, why am I doing that? Why can't I just be with the why can't I meet myself at 3 and say, "Hey, little girl, what's going on?" But it's like by that time of the day, I just feel like I don't have coping.
Yeah.
And you and I've talked about evening classes. It's just not even possible.
Yeah.
I can't. There's a non-functioning part. I know it's Vata, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that to me, it feels like if at 3, well, if I could go for a walk at 2, then I would be talking to the child.
Right.
But at 3, it's almost too late. But I wish I could just lean in with her and say, I hear you. It's a really overwhelming time.
Yeah.
I I like to acknowledge our sisters who have young children at home
Wow.
Mm.
and may or may not be working.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I can only imagine the turmoil that um, that has caused.
It's
Yeah,
the constant.
yeah, yeah. And how if if we can help them just find one little thing to lean into, one little tool, um,
I had this
sinking into the breath, or
Yeah, I had this great thing come up in an editing writing practice thing that I went to, and the woman that was hosting it, you know, talking about journaling, that the journal, and whether she was saying that the journal space is where you can just like dump
Mm-hmm.
what's in, like it doesn't have to have any form or can
Yeah.
become like non-coherent, just like dumping it onto the page so that you free up the space so that you can do the other things.
Mm-hmm.
And like very much very similar to like the 5 minutes on the, I used to say 20, now I say 5, like 5 minutes on the meditation cushion, or the 10-minute walk.
mm-hmm.
It's like those, trying to find those little lifelines kind of woven throughout the day, because there has to be more than one. This is what I'm realizing now.
Yeah, it's true.
They have to be like this thing that takes you through the day. Um,
So those, we would often see that bracket of women in the evening,
Yeah.
the 5:30,
Yeah.
6 o'clock class, and
Yeah.
kudos to them for carving that time out.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, someone like Mercy Kunin, right? So
yes,
running a daycare, having children.
yes,
So she does the recorded classes. And I just picture her at whatever time of night that we would never run a class, but
Mhm.
she can do it.
yeah.
And so being able to do it totally on her own time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
for those families.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And then there's just no reprieve. It's just this constant energy of, and again, from that survival mode, right?
I think very much so.
Yeah.
And then your world becomes quite small.
Yeah, and reactive,
Mm-hmm.
right? What choice do you have?
And it's
So,
interesting when your world becomes small like that, because then there's almost this frozen state of going out of it.
mm-hmm.
It shrinks, and then you're like, oh, well, I don't know. I've been in here for so long. I'm not sure about anything else out there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of an interesting, back to like fear driving the bus, right?
Yeah, so I'm just, whatever your situation is, um, yeah, really, like we're holding you.
Mm-hmm.
We're holding you, yeah, with heart and with our breath. And we miss you
Mm-hmm.
deeply.
And how many times a day do you think about a person.
Oh
Oh, I
yeah.
haven't seen Rosemary Kerwin for a long time. I
Hmm.
wonder how she is. Or
Hmm.
Hmm.
Josephine. I just emailed Josephine this morning to say hello. And yeah, every person leaves their mark, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And in it all, we have new yoga teachers from
Mm-hmm.
our YTT program who
Hmm.
are stepping into the unknown of being a yoga teacher in the unknown,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
which gives me great hope.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about he's been doing a lot of transforming on his own. He's been working in the bush because he's been locked down, and he said, I feel really weird coming out again. And I said,
Mm.
you're like a sprout, right?
Hmm.
You've lost your shell. He said, I totally am. But I
Hmm.
wonder, as we know, there, I'm not saying COVID's ending. I don't know what that looks like, but there's an emergence coming.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I know that all of us as seekers and sensitive ones have been through massive transformation. And I feel some anxiety around that moment where we do come out and we
Mhm.
see each other's faces again. And how are you preparing for that? Or what are your feelings around
I think I'm in like a gather and organize phase right
that?
now.
Mm-hmm.
I have, this deep desire to do these natural dye workshops, weaving in the movement practices and kind of all the things. And so it's been helpful for me to like make dye swatches and like record the things that I've discovered and like just like making the things, but gathering them
Mm-hmm.
as, I'm preparing for something,
Mm-hmm.
but not actually like getting too attached to, yeah, to when it happens, just in that preparing phase. And that is soothing for me. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, I've got this here and this here, and in that I'm creating. And that, the creating for me through the dyeing and art and whatever else it is, movement, is just about being able to manage the flow of life coming in.
For sure.
That's really what it is. And that feels like, in terms of an emergence perspective, that feels like something really exciting to offer. Like I
Yeah.
feel really, Muskoka tie-dye, we've just made these kits. And so there's something about now, taking what we've learned and then saying you can do this too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a place that I really love.
Mm-hmm.
Like that it isn't just something, of course what I do is different from what you'll do, but you can do this too. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this creative thing is really important for people,
It is.
for their spirits and for their, like just their own layers of depth as a human, you
But
know.
also that creativity is very based in the earth, which I think people desperately need. And I'm hoping we really are moving toward a copper cycle. But I think, if you are going to do natural dyes, that's really exciting to reconnect with the earth as well.
Yeah, and that whole thing for me, that whole way of living now, it's just about a relationship with the planet
Yeah. Yeah.
and deepening the relationship with the planet, and how can I continually make it reciprocal,
Hmm.
um, and then it just keeps feeding itself. It's been really amazing, actually.
It's a beautiful emergence.
Mhm. No, I think um, that how I'm preparing is I'm taking care of the day to day
Mm.
and trying not to let things be get built up,
Hmm.
emotionally, um, mentally, physically as well. I'm getting outside. I'm getting my nature fix. I'm loving the snow. I'm loving the sun. I'm noticing when it's gray.
Mm.
I'm reaching out, and I'm I'm trying to take care of the foundation
Hmm.
Yeah.
so that the foundation is there when I step out.
Yeah.
Hmm. For sure.
Yeah.
And that, like, that's such a great, like, it's something we can really sink into, to just take care of the day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the like,
Totally.
go for the walk, drink the water, take the vitamins,
Yeah.
you know, like that, that feels like a good place to put effort and energy. And I love what you said about taking care of the foundation, because it's true. And if we take care of the foundation, then we can emerge,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Totally.
because we want to emerge with some solidity, like with
Yes,
some
yes, some
energy, right?
steadiness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
don't you find that your no comes so much more easily? It does for
Yes,
me
Mm.
anyway. Like, no, I
definitely.
can't do that.
Yeah.
I don't. That's not right for my heart right now.
Yeah.
This is where I need to invest.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest gifts for me that's bringing me to emergence is to live as though I had time. I've
Yeah.
never done that. I'm
Mm.
always racing against some imaginary thing. And now I'm like, well, no, you can sink in
Mm.
and do the study that you want to do and then bring that forward as opposed to, like, I don't want to say off the cuff, but I'm certainly an ad lib person. But I feel like, no, I want to put more thought in now, and I can.
Mm.
And that again feels foundational and like really good footings.
Mm.
Yeah.
What I have, you know, really thought about is when we are able to gather again in some, you know, physical sense of, a
Mm.
semblance of community, that, it's going to be real clear on what, why, and like
Mm.
the intention,
Hmm.
like personally for
Yeah.
me, like that the spaces that we're in collectively will be, um, infused with just such intention, because
Hmm.
we've been apart for so long, you know,
Yeah.
like, I think, like, you know, really the idea of kind of ritual and ceremony around things makes it, you know, kind of delineates it from just the everyday ordinary,
Hmm.
taking care of the foundation. So I've been thinking about just the structure of coming back together as a community. Like, community doesn't mean we're just going to go to the mall and go shopping,
Right.
you
Mm.
know, to be around people.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, you know, we're going to have work to do.
Yeah. We
Mm.
sure
Like,
are.
you know,
There's lots of healing that has to happen.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I miss you girls.
Same.
And I
Mm.
really miss the people that came into Ahimsa every day. Yeah. Even when I see them online, I still miss seeing them live. And I'm
Absolutely.
so grateful that online can happen.
Yeah,
Mhm.
me too.
Yeah, I miss, and maybe those listening, and I'm in this pocket as well. You know, we arrive through the doors at Ahimsa, and we bring everything in with us,
Mm-hmm.
and as a someone who's bearing witness to that arrival, and then the going into the studio,
Mm.
and then bearing witness to what you look like when you come out on the other side,
Yeah.
Emergence.
is so incredibly profound.
So that's a
Um,
really beautiful metaphor to think about with emergence.
It
mhm.
really is.
Yeah, yeah, it is, Allie. It
Mm.
is because, um, you know, the physical softening, the um, the sinking of the voice,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
um, or
The
the
not so forward energy.
not so forward
Mm.
energy, which sometimes means there's tears, so someone quickly
Mm.
puts on their coat and leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they linger
Mm.
because they need to sit and have a few tears.
Mm-hmm.
But that emergence is pretty beautiful.
I also think about when you just talked about people coming in with all of their train loads. That's how we went into this, right? Into
Hmm.
COVID,
Mm.
and I do feel like a lot of that is, I have this image in my meditation now where the Lilliputians,
Yes,
from,
Gulliver's
yeah,
Travels.
thank
Yeah.
you, are working on all the ropes around my shoulders and they're
Mm.
unweaving them and they're unwinding them. And I call them every morning and say, help me to undo this
Mm.
story I've wrapped around my body. So that's a beautiful thing to think about, Barb. Thanks for that.
Mhm.
How we can all emerge as though we've done a year long or more practice.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
I think we'll all have the wild hair for it.
Oh my God.
I'll certainly have some strange clothes.
Experimental.
Experimental, making clothes from anything I can get my
Yes.
hands on.
Yes.
Well, hard to end,
Yeah.
but thank you both
Thank you.
for
Yeah.
everything.
Thank you, Allie.
Thanks for holding
Mm-hmm.
holding the cord.
Right back at you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. You are loved.